Shalom from Yavneh. What's in a name? In this week's Parsha, the Torah tells us the census that was conducted of the Jewish people before we entered Eretz Yisrael. And one of the families of Shimon is referred to as Zerach. Rashi and the Ramban point out that this Zerach corresponds to the name Tzochar, a son of Shimon, that we find in Parshas Vayigash. Why the name change? So the Ramban explains that Zerach and Tzochar both have a similar connotation. Zerach, of course, is to shine, and Tzochar is something which is white, something which is bright, also associated with the Tzohar. We remember the Tzohar Ta'aseh Teva. So, although the names are not identical, but they do have a similar connotation. The implication of the Ramban is that a name is not just a label. It's true that perhaps in English, if somebody's name is Harry or Bob or Joe, so there's nothing about him which makes him a Bob or a Joe or a Harry. It's a label, but in light of the fact that people probably don't like to be called by their social security number, so we'll give them a name. But in Judaism, we understand that a name has some meaning. Along similar lines, Ramban points out, the Nasi of Bnei Gad in Parshas Bamidbar is referred to at one point as Eliasaf ben Deuel, at another point as Eliasaf ben Reuel. The Ramban explains that Deuel and Reuel have a similar connotation. Deuel, he had knowledge, his thoughts were about God, and Reuel also has a similar meaning. After all, Ra'ayon, his thoughts were about God. We could add that not only does a name have a meaning, but in a certain sense, the name is associated with the essence of the person or the object. After all, we're told in Parshas Bereshis that Adam Harishon gave names to the animals. What's the significance of that? So presumably it's more than his think up all sorts of random names for a dog, a cat, an elephant, but rather in the wisdom that was granted by God, he was able to define the essence of each of the animals and give them their appropriate name. This idea that a name is associated with the essence of that object or that individual is something which is very relevant to the holiness of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, as we'll explain. We know that the source for the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, the source for the mitzvah of Birchas HaTorah, is the pasuk Ki Shem Hashem Ekra Havugodel Le'Elokeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu at the beginning of Ha'azinu says, when I call upon the name of God, give praise. Chazal say this teaches us that one is obligated to say a bracha before he learns Torah. What's the connection? We understand that Havu Godel Elokeinu is to give praise, but how do we see anything about learning Torah? Well, apparently, Shem Hashem is a reference to Talmud Torah. And truth is, when we say Birchas HaTorah every morning, then we say, V'ni anachnu v'tzetzeinu, kulanu yodei shemecha. So again, we see that Talmud Torah is associated with the name of God. What does this mean? Well, the Chavetz Chaim talks about, Rabbi Shechter discusses this on somewhat of a regular basis. We know that in the pasuk in Sefer Shmuel, the Torah is referred to as Mishal HaKadmoni, a mashal of HaKadmoni of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which can be understood not only a mashal that was stated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but also some sort of mashal in a certain sense about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that somehow the Torah on some level is some sort of a mashal of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Torah is closely related and associated with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Being involved in Torah learning is our way of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is perhaps why the Ramchal writes in Derech Hashem how critical it is for a person to have proper reverence when studying Torah. He points out that Torah learning is something which could have great influence on our world, bring so much bracha to our world, but one of the conditions for that taking place is that a person has proper yiras shamayim. Why should this be so? Well, presumably due to the fact that the whole part of the importance of Torah is the way of connecting with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So only if we have that proper yiras shamayim will our study of Torah be our way of connecting to our Kadosh Baruch Hu. We'll conclude with the following anecdote. There was once a meeting of gvirim, of philanthropists, some sort of parlor meeting for the yeshiva in Lakewood, for Rav Aharon Kotler's yeshiva, Beis Medrash Gavoa, currently known as BMG, in Lakewood. And some fellow got up and said that we need to support this yeshiva because we need to provide the ability for leadership of the Jewish people in the next generation. And this yeshiva will provide the leaders of the next generation. Rav Aharon Kotler then stood up and said, well, I need to make something clear. It is true that the leaders of the next generation quite possibly come from this yeshiva, but nevertheless, that's not the reason why I established the yeshiva. We established the yeshiva for the sake of people to be involved in Torah study. So certainly we do understand that Torah study is something which does give us the potential to lead the Jewish people. We do understand that Torah study certainly needs to be done. Lilmod amnas lasos, lilmod amnas lelamed, amnas lekayim. But we need to understand and keep in mind that the very fact that we're involved in God's Torah is our way of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, something which brings great bracha to us and to the rest of the world. Have a wonderful Shabbat.